service home improvement provider. All right, Bryan Suits is here with we have not named the regular segment yet. Handel on the Suits, Handel wears suits. Do we have a name for this yet?
Handel on Suits is pretty good.
The Dork Report. I don't know. I don't know about that. All right, a big story internationally, military story, is the Chinese and building military installations on artificial islands that they built in the South China Seas. And
terraforming, if you will.
Which is kind of interesting. First of all, their claim to this area around there is a little tenuous at best. Is that fair to say?
Well, the longer it goes undisputed, it gets better and better and better, because this is the thing about the law of the sea. It's based on English maritime law, and just like our civil law. If you were, if you're served with notice and you don't respond, what happens? It's a default judgment, right?
Well, not necessarily, because if you claim and this in dispute, I don't know if just disputing it in international courts, maritime law, is that enough? Or do you actually have to build on it?
Here's the thing. If you don't dispute it, it defaults. And so
Fair
what
enough.
the Chinese have done is they brought to a place called Fiery Cross Reef, hundreds of miles away from China, south in the South China Sea, closer to Vietnam than it is to China, closer to the Philippines than it's to China. And they brought hundreds of dredges on an existing reef that existed at low tide. And they dredged the seafloor and coral up to the point where there is now a full runway that can take any class of aircraft that the Chinese have. And they have mobile artillery on one of them. And they're defending it as sovereign territory, as CNN found out when they rode along with a U.S. Navy P-8, which is a 737. As they got close to the island, here's the problem. Larry, cut one.
Foreign military aircraft. This is Chinese Navy. You are approaching our military alert zone. Please immediately.
High above the South China Sea, the radio crackles with a stern warning.
Go!
Mission.
This is the Chinese Navy. Please go away quickly.
So they're restricting navigation.
Right.
That's
lovely.
the problem. If they didn't say anything, then legally you would have no reason to dispute it, because they made an island in international waters. But they now treat it like it's sovereign territory. Yeah. And they're acting like, well, what's your problem with our construction? We build airports in China.
Right, and lots of places reclaim land. I mean, there are, I can't see how many.
Well, Holland is one-third reclaimed land.
Right. And then you have, I think, San Francisco, part of their, what is it?
But it was contiguous. It's contiguous with the European sea shelf and the North American sea shelf.
So the question is here, and it's obvious why there's so much concern. The United States is jumping in, is because China is declaring itself, well, it already has a world military power, but it wants to expand its reach and effectively take over that entire region, much like Japan did just before World War II. So this is all of ours. We want to control this.
And it's odd because the Japanese called their empire a co-prosperity sphere. It wasn't very prosperous for the Filipinos and the Thais and the rest. The Chinese are sort of striking the same note, saying, well, first of all, it's the South China Sea. It's not the North Brunei Sea, so it's already named after us. And our intentions are totally peaceful. Secretary of Defense Ashton Carter was at this Singapore Shangri-La summit with the Chinese yesterday, and he said this in Cut 2.
With its actions in the South China Sea, China is out of step with both the international rules and norms that underscore the Asia-Pacific security architecture and the regional consensus that favors diplomacy and opposes coercion.
He spoke because everyone who's not China came to the United States and said they're not going to listen to Singapore, they're not going to listen to Brunei, they're not even going to listen to the Philippines, and the Philippines are in court with China. They will only listen to you. And so Ashton Carter said, "Look, we all rise, we all win." And the Prime Minister of Singapore was saying, "Don't make us take sides." And when every country but China says to you, "Don't make us take sides," obviously they've taken sides. The Chinese replied, saying, "Nothing to see here. Move along. This is totally groundless." In Cut 3.
I think your criticism is groundless and not constructive. The freedom of navigation in the South China Sea is not at all an issue, because the freedom has never been affected.
Except that you just heard audio of the Chinese military say, "You go!"
Right. Get out of here, or effectively we're going to blow your brains out. So here, tell me if this resonates. And that is, certainly the United States is going to do absolutely nothing militarily. Zero. All they're going to do is chide China, maybe threaten economic sanctions of some kind, which is not going to happen.
No.
Do you think the Chinese have any compunction if anybody crosses that international line, their sovereign territory as they see it, that they'll unload weaponry?
I don't think they will at this point, but there's a lot of dangerous dynamics, and one of them is this explosive growth of the Chinese military. In 5,000 years of history, the Chinese only invade their next-door neighbors. In 1979, they invaded Vietnam. They did it again in 94. They fought India in 62. They don't send fleets to the other side of the world. But now the Chinese Navy, which is called the People's Liberation Army, Navy, is muscular. And they have an aircraft carrier, and the Air Force and Army have said, well, what about unsinkable aircraft carriers? Let's just build islands and pre-position troops and planes.
Different philosophy, different time, because now they're a world power, legitimately a world power. Previously, they were not a world power, so they're right up there. As a matter of fact, the argument is that the United States and China are the last two superpowers left, not particularly Russia. And they want to simply beat their chests and show the world, here we are, and legitimately be the powerhouse in that part of the world.
The best analogy in history is the trade disputes that turned into 3 wars between Rome and Carthage. And look on a map for Carthage. It doesn't exist anymore. It's where Tunisia is now. But after several hundred years, they couldn't avoid this. And this is where the neighbors in Asia, they're aware of this. They read history. Americans don't. And they want a peaceful resolution on this.
Yeah, and everybody understands. And certainly the first thing that comes to mind is the wars between Carthage and Rome. I get that.
And part of the problem is that the Chinese, because they've been so insular for years and years and years, this is why they have trouble with the concept of copyrights. And they think that maritime law is a Western thing being imposed on the rest of the world. Speaking English being the aviation language of the world, they think is ridiculous for a domestic flight in China. But their pilots have to learn English.
Right.
So there's a lot of things that is from their perspective, their cultural perspective.